Let's now talk about some studies about feminist discourses in which we'll focus on the gender dichotomization of men and women, especially in relation to public and private spheres. One of the key research focuses in critical discourse analysis studies has been about the allocation of various gendered roles to men and women in relation to their public and private spheres. In such allocations, it has been observed that men has constantly been associated with public domains. I mean, they can work outside, they can move outside, they can have better external opportunities of socializing, whereas women are associated with their domestic responsibilities more, especially in non-Western societies of the world. In this regard, we can have a look at a very popular study which was conducted by McConey. McConey study tests this notion of the powerful adherence to gender dichotomizations of public and private spheres, as I mentioned earlier. In such dichotomy, public spheres are associated with men, whereas private or domestic spheres are associated with women. This was a very interesting study in which some kind of photographic triggers or photographs were shown to the people who were living in UK. They were the migrants coming from Zimbabwe, and they were shown some pictures to show their reaction. And the pictures carried the material about men doing some domestic jobs or childcare, and the responses generated some kind of treat for critical discourse analysis, because the responses generated on there show a kind of power and this dichotomization of domestic and public spheres. We found that masculinity was associated with some kind of bread earning, and men were thought to be responsible for earning the bread and working outside, whereas most of them associated women or femininity with household responsibilities. The gender identity of Zimbabwean men was perceived to have been threatened because of their migration to United Kingdom, because here they have to work differently. They have to work for domestic things also. They probably would have to wash dishes, take care of their children at homes, which is quite against their general expectation of being a male. Assuming a new subordinate status as women, the men were perceived as having lost their masculinity. When they were doing domestic household things, they were thought to have lost their masculinity, because masculinity is thought to be associated with doing jobs outside their home. The men's discourse constructed domesticity as a space of marginality and women as a social group as worthless. They thought that men are more useful when they work outside as compared to women. And in their responses, many women were confirming their subordinate role. In other words, they accepted the subordinate role which has been allotted to them by their males, or their cultural norms they brought forward from their home countries. Whereas some women showed some non-conformist views. They were not ready to accept such things easily. The study showed how dominant gendered norms upholding the public-private split is also intersected with other social factors, for example, racial, cultural, and religious identity categories, to safeguard some kind of patriarchal structures which were there in their home countries. In another study which was conducted by Nguyen in 2011, shows that even where women are actively encouraged to participate in public spheres, still their primary domain remains to work at home. Their domestic job is considered to be their primary job, whereas their job outside is considered to be something which they are not made for. In this regard, Vietnamese women public involvement perceived widespread coverage in media also, and it has been discussed widely. Whereas it can be considered some kind of gender equality. But if we just look at the discourses about women participation in women in public spheres, which were analyzed in this study, we found that women participation in the public sphere is considered to be a kind of responsibility, as Vietnamese constitution accepts them to participate in public sphere, but still it's not some kind of a chance to women to actualize themselves. It's not a process of their self actualization, because somewhere they have been realized that their domestic duties are primary as compared to their social or professional duties. Similarly, the recognition of women's public role does not translate into a redistribution of labor in the domestic front. And the prevailing Confucian ideology, which allocates women some kind of domestic roles and shows emphasizes on their self-sacrificial roles for women as good mothers, obedient daughters, daughter-in-laws, and submissive wives. It allocates or appreciates very little to their public or professional spheres. This study also argues that the assertion of Confucian philosophy reassures Vietnamese men of their culturally superior position and keeps Vietnamese women in check at time when they are increasingly proving themselves as good as men in public spheres. What we can conclude here is that the divide between men and women in relation to their duties or responsibilities in public and private spheres are another important topic which can be investigated through critical discourse analysis. And this can be a very interesting topic in Asian societies, including Pakistan.